mission this year after Crew 10 launched last month. This is our 52nd Dragon mission overall and the 47th to the space station, with 31 of those on reflown Dragons. Propellant loading began today about 15 minutes ago and will complete at the T-minus 2-minute mark. Range is green and ready to support. Weather is looking good with only a 5% probability of violation. Everything is looking great as we count down to an instantaneous launch attempt at 4:15 a.m. Eastern Time today. With that, let's check in with my NASA counterpart, Joseph Zakrzewski at Johnson Space Center in Houston. Hi, Joseph.
Hello, Yomei. It's great to see you again. We are joining you from the International Space Station Flight Control Room here at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. This is where mission operations are coordinated 24/7 to ensure the health, safety, and success of the orbiting laboratory. And it's an exciting place to be during a launch like this morning's. Right now, our flight control team, led by Flight Director Diane Daly, and the Horizon flight team are actively monitoring all systems aboard the International Space Station as we prepare to receive the delivery of cargo and science on Dragon. And Dragon's ultimate destination, of course, is the International Space Station, and the entire team here in Houston is working closely with you and the team in Hawthorne, California, and the launch team at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida to ensure everything is on track. This level of coordination across multiple teams, time zones, and specialties is what makes missions like these possible. At this hour, I'm happy to report that all systems are looking good, and the team here in Mission Control is go for launch. The space station is currently orbiting more than 250 miles above Earth, and the Expedition 73 crew, including NASA astronauts Anne McClain, Nicole Ayers, and Johnny Kim, are prepped and ready for Dragon's arrival. They've reviewed all the procedures, configured equipment, and are well rested for what will be a busy day on orbit today and tomorrow when Dragon is expected to dock. This delivery includes thousands of pounds of supplies, critical hardware, and scientific investigations that will keep the crew busy and support ongoing research. We'll be watching closely here as the countdown continues and the mission gets underway. For now, I'll turn it back to Hawthorne for a closer look at the launch vehicle and spacecraft supporting this commercial resupply services mission. Take it away, Yomei.
Thanks, Joseph. As we continue to count down, let's take a closer look at the vehicles that will be taking CRS-32 to the space station today. Sitting atop the Falcon 9, Dragon and its trunk stand over 27 feet tall. The spacecraft is headed for the Zenith docking port on the station that was just vacated by Crew 9, which returned home a few weeks ago. Dragon's trunk holds solar cells that provide power while it's in free flight.
Stage 2 LOX load has started.
The trunk can also carry unpressurized cargo, which it will be doing today. There are 16 Draco thrusters on board that can be used in space to help navigate the spacecraft to its destination, each providing about 90 pounds of force. Dragon has played a significant role in advancing our future in space by safely transporting crew and cargo to and from the station. There are currently 4 Dragon spacecraft supporting human spaceflight missions that have docked to the station. Their names are Endeavour, Resilience, Endurance, and Freedom. And we have an additional 3 Dragon supporting cargo missions, one of which is the one supporting today's mission. CRS-32 will be delivered to orbit today on SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket, which provides 1.7 million pounds of thrust on its first stage thanks to its 9 Merlin M1D engines. Today's booster last flew in March for the NROL 69 mission and also flew a Starlink mission in February. Once the first and second stages separate, the Merlin engines are also used to help land the first stage back on Earth. Today, the booster will be attempting to land at Landing Zone 1, just down the road from the launch pad. Meanwhile, the second stage will continue to orbit, powered by one single Merlin vacuum engine with over 220,000 pounds of thrust. The second stage will secure Dragon's entry into low Earth orbit before separating, leaving Dragon to continue its journey on its own thrusters. About 50 seconds after separation, Dragon's nose cone deploy sequence will begin, exposing its guidance navigation controls that help.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome here to the launch pad. We are at L-14 minutes, 40 seconds, and counting till launch of SpaceX CRS-32. We were listening into SpaceX Mission Control there, and we will listen back in just a moment, but I did want to break in with something we thought that would be important to be made, an announcement here. We've done this once before, and sad to have to do it here again, but I'm just going to read directly from a statement from the Vatican. Pope Francis died on Easter Monday, April 21st, 2025, the age of 88, at his residence in the Vatican, Casa Santa Marta. He was 1936 to 2025. Our thoughts and prayers are with everyone that will be touched by this news, but we thought it would be important to mention that here this evening. We will continue on with our live coverage as we would with any other launch, but I appreciate your guys' comments and thoughts in the chat and your patience and prayers for those that are affected by this breaking news here this evening. Let's listen back in to SpaceX Mission Control.
Thanks, Yome. And that's right, the International Space Station is truly in its golden era of research and exploration. For nearly 25 years, it stood as a symbol of what's possible through collaboration and innovation. Since November 2nd of the year 2000, humans have lived and worked aboard the orbiting laboratory continuously, pushing the boundaries of human spaceflight and scientific discovery. This station has welcomed more than 280 people from around the world and supported over 4,000 research investigations leading to breakthroughs in medicine, materials, and technology that benefit life on Earth and future of missions deeper into space. It's inspired millions of students through education programs and demonstrated the strength of international partnerships. As we look ahead to the 25th anniversary of continuous human presence this November, the space station remains a powerful example of what humanity can achieve together. With future commercial space stations on the horizon and missions to the Moon and Mars and beyond underway, the discoveries made here continue to shape the future of space exploration. The International Space Station, 25 years of innovation, discovery, and enduring spirit of exploration.
And liftoff. International Space Station is underway.
We are in the golden age of the space station right now in terms of the return on investment and what we're able to do there.
One of the great legacies of the space station is not just going to be science, but very importantly, the international cooperation. This is perhaps most prominent, international cooperation for exploration.
SpaceX is proud to have been a part of missions to stations since the COTS demo Flight 2 mission in 2012. Since 2019, Dragon crews have splashed down off the Florida coast, but now all Dragon recovery operations are returning to the West Coast and will take place off the coast of California. This ensures that Dragon's trunk, when jettisoned during re-entry, will enter over the Pacific Ocean. There are 3 sites supported by SpaceX located off the coast of Southern California, including Los Angeles, Oceanside, and San Diego. Spreading the supported sites across multiple locations helps to maximize the return opportunities for Dragon missions. SpaceX's first human spaceflight mission and first mission overall to splash down off the West Coast was From 2, which happened just a couple weeks ago on April 4th. We are routinely looking to innovate and improve, and we use data to help inform these decisions. The Dragon launching today carries some key data-driven upgrades, including the first drogues, which are small parachutes that deploy right before the larger parachutes during re-entry, were built entirely in-house by SpaceX. There are 2 drogue chutes on each Dragon, which each take about 500 hours to manufacture and another 100 hours to pack and be ready for flight. That's about 4 months of work. SpaceX helps reduce the cost of space flight and increase reliability by bringing manufacturing in-house, which allows us to improve components like drogues faster and more efficiently. Over the last 5 years, Dragon has supported 17 human spaceflight missions and flown 66 crew members, representing more than a dozen countries. With the capacity to carry up to 4 passengers, Dragon has proven to be a versatile spacecraft. It can autonomously dock to the space station when outfitted with the ISS docking adapter you can see on the left, and then it can also be configured with hardware to support panoramic views or a spacewalk, which made its debut on the Polaris Dawn mission last year. In free flyer mode, which refers to missions that orbit Earth and do not dock with the station, the docking adapter can be swapped out for a cupola, as you can see from our recent From 2 mission. So far, SpaceX and Dragon have carried more than 1,000 research experiments to and from low Earth orbit, both to the International Space Station and on our free flyer missions. Our next crew mission to station will be the upcoming Axiom 4 mission, which is scheduled to launch no earlier than next month, May. It will feature the most research and science-related activities conducted on an Axiom space mission to date, featuring around 60 scientific studies. From DNA sequencing to 3D printing, studies enabled by Dragon and the space station test a variety of technologies, systems, and materials that will be needed for future long-duration exploration missions. Every mission yields critical research and learnings that help make life both on Earth and in space better. And speaking of research experiments, I'm going to send you back to Joseph for details on some of the science experiments that Dragon will be taking to the station today.
Thank you, Yome. And that's right, continuing scientific discovery is enabled by missions like this morning. Dragon is carrying over 3 tons of cargo, including critical scientific hardware and samples. The microgravity environment aboard the International Space Station offers a unique platform to observe physical and biological phenomena and serves as a testbed for advancing technologies that benefit life on Earth and support future exploration deeper into space. The science aboard Dragon represents months and in some cases years of preparation by dedicated scientists and engineers. Here are some of the highlights of what's inside Dragon today.
NASA and SpaceX are set to launch the
Dragon is in terminal count and is on internal power.
There's that call out. Dragon is in internal power, and we are getting ready for strong back retraction. You should be able to see those clamp arms open slowly here. They're kind of covered in gas, cold gas from the cryo loading, but they should be
Strong
open
back lower has started.
here shortly. There's the call out for the strong back retraction sequence has started. So you can see those clamp arms opening around the Falcon 9 rocket. Clamp arms are now fully open, and you should see that strong back begin to recline away from the Falcon 9 booster. There you can see it starting to recline.
And there you saw the strong back recline. The range around the launch site also green. If for
Stage
some
one
reason
lock
we are
fluid
unable to
is
launch
complete.
this morning, we will have a backup opportunity tomorrow, April 22nd at 3:53 a.m. Eastern. As you heard, that call out for stage 1 liquid oxygen loading has been completed. At T-minus 60 seconds, Falcon 9 in startup. This means the rocket's autonomous internal flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. And just inside T-minus 2 seconds, we will light up the Merlin 1D engines for liftoff.
The vehicle continues to be healthy, and the Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues. Currently, the weather is green, and the range is ready to support a T0 at 4:15 a.m. Eastern. We only have a 5% probability of violation due to weather, so everything is looking great. And in these last few minutes, Falcon 9 is performing final health checks on its primary communications, avionics, and propulsion systems in preparation for flight. We'll hear some
Stage
call-outs.
2 LOX load is complete.
There is the Stage 2 LOX loading complete.
At the time of launch today, the International Space Station will be
Dragon
flying
is
some
in auto
260
idle.
statute miles over in northwest Turkey as Dragon has entered auto idle.
At T-minus 1 minute, Falcon 9 will be in startup.
Gas launch closeout.
For the onboard flight computers, will take control of the countdown. Dragon will also transition to internal power at this time. This is also when the first and second stages will pressurize for launch.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
We are now in startup,
Dragon is in countdown.
and Dragon is in countdown. Range remains go for launch, and we are waiting for that final launch director go.
LD, go for launch.
There is that launch director go for launch. All systems are go for a launch of Falcon 9 and the CRS-32 mission.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 15. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff. Go Falcon, go Dragon.
And And liftoff. NASA's SpaceX 32nd Commercial Resupply Services mission is on its way to the International Space Station, carrying over 3 tons of science and supplies to Expedition 73 as it begins its pitch downrange.
Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. During ascent, we tilt or gimbal the engines, guiding the rocket into what we call a gravity turn. During this turn, the vehicle is flying both up and
power and telemetry nominal.
horizontally away from the launch pad. Everything is looking good. In just a few moments here, you'll hear the call out for max
Falcon
Q.
is supersonic.
Falcon is now faster than the speed of sound. And max Q is the period of maximum aerodynamic pressure that the vehicle will see in ascent.
Max Q.
There is that call out for max Q. And coming up shortly, we will have a few events in quick succession, starting with MECO, or main engine cutoff, followed by stage separation,
MVAC chill.
second engine start 1, and the boost back burn. You heard that call out for MVAC chill as it prepares for second engine startup. Now, main engine cutoff, or MECO, is the point in flight where we shut down the 9 Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. Shortly after that, stage 1 and 2 will separate from each other, with the first stage booster beginning its trip back to Earth. Second engine start 1, or SES-1, is when we ignite that single Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. The boost back burn will then start up on the first stage, which is one of the 3 burns required for the vehicle to make its way back to today's landing zone. This burn assists the vehicle to reorient itself back towards land. And in just under 10 seconds here, we should have main engine cutoff, and you'll see those 9 Merlin 1D engines on the first stage shut down.
Main engine cutoff.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
Stage 1 boost back startup.
Wow, beautiful views from the first stage and second stage camera. You can see the first stage leaving in that view. And as you saw and heard, those events just happened. Main engine cutoff, stage separation, second engine startup 1, and the first stage boost back burn. You can see beautiful views of that first stage boost back burn right now. That boost back burn will continue for about 30 more seconds. Again, this is the burn where the engines will bring the trajectory back towards our landing site at Cape Canaveral, back to landing zone 1, which is just a short hop from where we lifted off just a few minutes ago. And we have just under 10 seconds of that boost back burn of the first stage.
Stage 1 boost back shutdown.
There is the shutdown of that first stage boost back burn. You can see the second stage is still in the middle of its burn. And in about 3 minutes, there will be 2 additional burns on our first stage to prepare for its landing at landing zone 1 at Cape Canaveral. We are just under T plus 4 minutes
Both vehicles are on a nominal trajectory.
into today's mission. You just heard the call out that both first and second stage are on a nominal trajectory. CRS-32 is SpaceX's 45th launch this year. We are coming up on entry burn of the first stage and then second engine cutoff of the second stage. Around the T plus 6.5 minute mark, you should see on your screen the first stage's entry burn. For that entry burn, we relight 3 of the 9 M1D engines on the first stage, starting with the center E9 engine, followed shortly after by the E1 and E5 engines. And this burn will slow the vehicle down as it passes back into the Earth's atmosphere. We need to slow down to reduce re-entry forces, which help us to recover and reuse the first stage. You can follow along on the screen to the bottom left and right of your screen. You can see the stage 1 telemetry on the bottom left and the stage 2 telemetry on the bottom right. And again,
Both vehicles continue to follow a nominal trajectory.
both first and second stages continue to be on a good trajectory. And on your screen is the second stage MVAC engine glowing in the middle of its burn. carrying our CRS-32 mission with the Dragon and trunk on top of the second stage right now. We are under a minute to the start of that first stage entry burn. Again, this will be a 3-engine burn of our first stage as it slows itself down, making its way back to landing zone 1. And that burn will be a 3-engine burn with the center E9 engine along with 2 engines on the side. Meanwhile, second stage continues to be looking good with that single Merlin vacuum engine carrying the Dragon
Both
capsule
vehicles continue to follow a nominal trajectory.
towards the orbit. Just a few seconds away from the start of that first stage entry burn.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
There is that start of the first stage entry burn.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And
Stage 1 FTS has saved.
there is the shutdown of the entry burn and the call out that the flight termination system has saved. Now, this first stage that's supporting today's mission has just performed its entry burn for the 3rd time. Falcon 9 is the world's first orbital class reusable rocket, and this is important because reusability allows SpaceX
Both vehicles following a nominal trajectory.
to refly the most expensive parts of the rocket, which in turn drives down the cost of access to space. Now, coming up, we'll have the landing burn on the first stage,
Stage 1 transonic.
quickly by the shutdown of our MVAC engine on the second stage. You can see the lights of the Florida coast in that view on your left.
Stage 1 landing burn.
There is the start of our stage 1 landing burn. We're now waiting for Falcon 9 to make that precision landing.
Deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
What a beautiful view of that stage 1 landing. And there you have it. That landing marks SpaceX's 434th recovery of an orbital class rocket, including first stage landings for Falcon 9 and Heavy. We are now looking at stage 2.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Which is carrying our CRS-32 mission, and it is in the middle of its burn with the second engine cut off in just a few moments here.
Stage 2 FTS has saved.
And you heard the call out that flight termination system is saved, getting ready for shutdown.
Nominal park orbit insertion.
There we got confirmation. We did have second engine cutoff, and we did have confirmation of a good orbit. It looks like we are on track for Dragon separation in just under 30 seconds here. The vehicle is now coasting with Dragon attached, and we are just moments away from spacecraft separation. We're seeing a great view from the second stage as it cools down and prepares to separate Dragon so that it may begin its journey to the International Space Station. Looks like we may be seeing the sun rising and shining on that MVAC.
Dragon separation confirmed.
There is that confirmation of Dragon separation. We've had a great mission so far with an on-time liftoff at 4:15 a.m. Eastern Time, a successful stage separation followed by a successful landing of our first stage at landing zone 1 and a good orbital insertion. We are now just waiting for nose cone deployment, which should happen in just a few moments here. So I'll hand it back over to you, Joseph, at JSC.
Thank you very much, Yome, and great to see the NASA SpaceX 32nd commercial resupply mission light up the morning sky off the Florida coastline. And always great to work with you as we again await the nose cone deploy. And as we await those moments where the nose cone will expose those 4 forward bulkhead Dracos, these Draco thrusters will execute a series of maneuvers necessary to raise its orbit and meet up with the International Space Station. So as we continue to monitor that nose cone deploy, right now, immediately after Dragon separates from the Falcon 9, it begins what we call the activation and rendezvous phase of the mission. Now, this is during the phase that Dragon is configured for on-orbit operations and will begin after the separation of Dragon from the Falcon 9, which you just saw, and it'll end with the completion of the final co-elliptic burn that'll occur as Dragon begins its methodical approach to the International Space Station. Our initial orbit today, 190 kilometers by 210 kilometers, with those numbers representing the perigee and apogee of the orbit, the lowest and highest points of the Earth. That means the orbit isn't a perfect circle, but more like a very slight ellipse. And over the next several hours after liftoff, Dragon will execute a series of burns, which will gradually raise its orbit to align more closely with the station. And there are 5 major burns or firings of those Draco thrusters we were talking about on Dragon that will bring the spacecraft close to station before we begin the final approach maneuvers. And we'll continue to monitor that nose cone deploy as it looks like it'll get underway here shortly. Let's take a look inside and transfer to the control rooms. On the left side, you can see the SpaceX mission control teams over in Hawthorne, California, and that oversaw today's launch and will continue to monitor Dragon on its journey to the International Space Station over the next day. The team you see on the right are here with me in mission control in Houston, and the International Space Station flight control team is monitoring the orbiting complex, and over the course of the operations jointly with Hawthorne, the flight controller is there. Those joint operations between the two teams, you will see, will come a little closer to when Dragon is in its final approach phase, and that'll be about 2 hours or so prior to docking. The teams here are awaiting for that nose cone to deploy, and we'll also bring you those live views from inside Dragon, where you'll be able to see it open up and begin its journey onto the International Space Station ahead of docking. Well, speaking of docking, that is slated for tomorrow, Tuesday, April 22nd, with the anticipated time of 8:20 a.m. Eastern Time at 7:20 a.m. Central, and we'll have all the coverage starting here on NASA Plus, starting at 7:45 a.m. Eastern, 5:45 a.m. Central. Thank you for following along as we continue to await the nose cone deploy of NASA's SpaceX 32nd commercial resupply services mission, as it is well on its way to the International Space Station after that on-time liftoff of 4:15 a.m. Eastern Time, carrying over 3 tons of science and supplies to the Expedition 73 crew. And that includes NASA astronaut Anne McClain, who you can see in the front right-hand side, along with Nicole Ayers on the front left, Johnny Kim, who is on that back left-hand side, just over in the background, JAXA astronaut and Expedition Commander, newly minted Commander of Expedition 73, Takuya Onishi, and Roscosmos cosmonauts Kirill Peskov, Sergei Ryzhikov, and Alexei Zubritsky joining up for Expedition 73. And going into the docking phases, and again anticipated for tomorrow morning, Kim and Onishi will be the ones that will be monitoring the Dragon spacecraft as it approaches the International Space Station, and they just arrived on station pretty recently. For Johnny Kim, just arrived on station nearly 2 weeks ago, back on April 8th. And for Takuya Onishi on the right-hand side, he was just ahead of him with Crew 10 as he would arrive to the orbiting laboratory back on March 16th. And we mentioned that Onishi, the newly minted commander of Expedition 73, and that was just a couple of days ago on April 18th, and what has been a pretty busy weekend for overall spaceflight involving the International Space Station. And as docking begins, and once the spacecraft docks to the orbiting laboratory, it'll be Kim and team that'll begin to unpack the 3+ tons of cargo and supplies as they begin to re-up and refuel the International Space Station. As we continue to monitor here and await the nose cone deploy of the NASA SpaceX 32 or CRS-32 commercial resupply services mission, we mentioned some of the key science aboard that spacecraft, and that was earlier in the broadcast, and you can find out more at nasa.gov. But another key piece of science is the APEX 12 experiment, the Advanced Plant Experiments in Space 12, that will investigate whether certain cell components can help plants survive stressful environments in space and influence the viability of future future space crops. And we just got reports that the nose cone is beginning to deploy, so we'll keep an eye on for those first images inside Dragon. And there you can see the full breakdown of cargo that is heading to the International Space Station, including crew supplies, science investigations, spacewalking and equipment, and much more. And aboard Dragon also is a carefully curated menu of food to support those aboard the station, including a diverse selection of tailored choices to reflect the crew's individual preferences. And each item is thoughtfully engineered to help maintain the crew's health, performance, and morale throughout the mission. And we continue to follow along inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room as we await the nose cone deploy of the 32nd Commercial Resupply Services mission. We mentioned earlier that Dragon will perform 5 key burns using its Draco thrusters to steadily close in on the International Space Station before beginning its final approach. Well, that first burn, the first major burn, is the phase burn, which happens at the highest point or apogee of Dragon's very first orbit as it's well on its way. It raises the lowest port or the orbit or the perigee, helping Dragon get closer to the space station's path. Burn number 2 is the boost burn, which is based on what our orbital data will tell us. The raise Dragon's orbit until it reaches an altitude just 10 kilometers lower than the space station. And then the third burn is the close co-elliptic burn, which adjusts Dragon's orbit so it stays about 10 kilometers below the station the whole way around the Earth. The fourth burn, the transfer burn maneuver, which raises Dragon's highest orbital point to just 2.5 kilometers below the station. And then we mentioned earlier the final co-elliptic burn that'll keep Dragon in a stable orbit 2.5 kilometers beneath the station as it lines up for approach. As we continue to follow along and await the nose cone deploy, starting to close in on that nose cone, opening up and exposing those bulkhead Draco thrusters. That'll help begin those burns. That'll begin about 45 minutes or so, that phase burn, that first one we mentioned, just shortly after that great on-time launch here earlier this morning. And after that, the Dragon spacecraft will reach different waypoints or checkpoints along its way as it'll begin approach initiation, and then waypoint 0, waypoint 1, and 2 before eventually docking with the International Space Station. That is slated again for tomorrow morning, Tuesday, April 22nd at 8:20 a.m. Eastern Time, 7:20 a.m. Central Time, and we'll have the NASA Plus start time at 7:45 a.m. Eastern, 5:45 a.m. Central. And we are closing in slowly but surely on that nose cone to be deployed as the team's on the ground in SpaceX on the left-hand side. You can see in Hawthorne, California, as well as the team here inside of the International Space Station Flight Control Room and Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, currently monitoring Dragon's progress. And they will be doing so over the next several hours, a little more than a day, between the time of launch to the time of the anticipated docking. And we just got confirmation that the nose cone deploy has been completed. And again, that exposes those forward bulkhead Draco thrusters as Dragon now continues its journey. And there's a great view coming from the Dragon spacecraft right there in the first looks of Earth as it makes its way and fades up and towards the top of your screen. And again, Dragon carrying those 6,700 and such pounds of cargo and supplies, beginning its journey to the International Space Station. Well, now that the nose cone is deployed and Dragon is ready for its phasing burns to the space station with a successful orbit insertion, I'm now joined by Dana Weigel, the International Space Station Program Manager. Dana, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me today. Excellent and beautiful launch we had.
It's wonderful to see it light up the Florida coast like it does. And of course, well on the way to the International Space Station that you oversee, we've discussed the crucial role of collaboration and teamwork in making missions like this possible. How have you witnessed this in your team's preparation for this launch this morning?
Well, we have hundreds of researchers worldwide and a large industry supply base across the country who support our missions. Putting together a mission is a big technical and logistics challenge, from equipment manufacturing and deliveries to packing and integrating the cargo and planning and executing the mission. An additional challenge for this mission was the late manifest changes that we had to make to adjust to the loss of the NG-22 Cygnus mission that was originally planned to fly this summer. It's hard to describe the complexity of how we keep our space station well supplied with the proper reserve margins. It's one of the hallmarks of how we successfully have maintained the continuous presence in low Earth orbit on the International Space Station for the last quarter of a century. We're fortunate to have an extremely dedicated and adaptable team across NASA and industry who come together to make our missions look seamless.
And it's been a wonder to watch you and the team work too. And I mentioned earlier, it's been a pretty busy weekend, just this weekend alone, in spaceflight involving the International Space Station. We saw NASA astronaut Johnny Kim recently arrived at Space Station. Spacewalk preparations are underway, scheduled for May 1st. Change in command, a new expedition beginning with Expedition 73, and veteran astronaut Don Pettit landing yesterday and returning home to Houston earlier this evening. How has your team's preparation and everything that you just mentioned reflected that spirit of adaptability and coordination across what's been a pretty busy time frame?
Well, the pace of our current activity is nothing new to the International Space Station team. The impressive thing that's always so striking to me is how NASA and our international and commercial partners work so closely together to make it look easy. Trust me, none of it is easy, nor is any facet of human spaceflight.
We mentioned earlier, and you just touched upon it a moment ago, the excitement building towards the station's 25th anniversary of human presence that'll be coming up this November. A lot of key milestones along the path that have happened. How do missions like the commercial service or resupply services mission, this 32nd one, continue to showcase the station's capabilities and its role in advancing science, technology, and exploration?
As we have now for decades, science is the hallmark and trademark of the International Space Station. The arrival of Dragon tomorrow with its supplies and research not only advances science and technology, but also enables us to continue fulfilling our objectives on this most amazing complex.
Dana Weigel, the International Space Station Program Manager, thank you so much for your time in joining today's broadcast.
Thank you again for having me.
Let's check back in with Yome and the team at SpaceX.
Thanks, Joseph. Dragon will now begin its journey toward the International Space Station, executing a series of phasing burns to gradually close the distance. This approach will take just over a day, with docking targeted for early tomorrow morning, Tuesday, April 22nd. NASA and SpaceX continue working side by side to deliver science, supplies, and inspiration to the orbiting laboratory. Congratulations again to the teams on another successful cargo resupply services launch. SpaceX is honored to be a part of NASA's Commercial Resupply Services initiative to deliver critical cargo to the space station, and we thank NASA for entrusting us with today's mission. It's only April, and we've already launched in partnership with NASA missions like Crew 10, SphereX, and Punch, Firefly Aerospace, and Intuitive Machines. For those of you following along, you'll know that this mission marks our 45th of the year, and to stay up to date with all of our launches and missions, check spacex.com/launches for schedules. That will do it for us here at SpaceX in Hawthorne. Good night, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. Hand it back to you, Joseph.
Thanks, Yome. As always, it's been a pleasure to team up with you and share this launch with you. Join us on NASA Plus for our coverage of the final approach and docking of this spacecraft beginning at 5:45 a.m. Central Time, 6:45 a.m. Eastern. Tomorrow, Tuesday, for that docking expected near 7:20 a.m. Central, 8:20 a.m. Eastern. Be sure to visit nasa.gov for the latest updates on our coverage and expected docking time as we follow the operations throughout the next few hours. With Dragon safely on its way to the International Space Station, that wraps up this morning's coverage of NASA and SpaceX's 32nd Commercial Resupply Services launch. Until next time, this is Mission Control Houston.